Right. Thanks, Matt. I have one thing. I just want to ask you about this statement that came out just before the human rights ceremony about the authority for visa bans against people who are officials, authorities who are involved in the wrongful detention of people. Don't you have the authority to do that already?
This was outlining, we had it under a different authority to do it in some circumstances, but this was kind of refining and expanding our ability to use those authorities with respect to wrongful detentions. I'm happy to get you a more detailed.
Yeah, okay. Please do, because I just don't understand why adding a layer.
It refers to the way we exercise those authorities under different provisions of the law, and I'm happy to get you a technical expert to talk about that.
But I mean, it just seems kind of
refines
pointless
it.
since you already have this authority. You've used it before, and so I don't understand why you need to use it.
I can guarantee you this was explained to me. It's a very detailed. It is a very detailed technicality under the law.
I'll let it go for now. I want to go to Syria. I'm just. Can you explain to me this whole idea of when you say you're prepared to recognize a new Syrian leadership that does these specific things that you've outlined? Whatever happened to the old, what had been in previous, a mantra for decades that you don't recognize governments, you recognize states? And what does it mean that you would recognize a new leadership that meets these criteria?
So I don't think I'm qualified to speak to a State Department mantra that dates back decades, since I've not been here for all that time. But I can tell you when we speak to this, what we mean is, look, you have seen this group, HTS, take control of some of the levers of power. You have seen them work to name an acting prime minister. And the United States does not have standing diplomatic relations with Syria, right? We withdrew our embassy a number of years ago. We recognize Syria as a state. We have not recognized the HTS as the governing authority in Syria. We have not recognized them as the government of Syria. And so what we are making clear is, before we recognize a government of Syria, a particular government of Syria, these are the steps that we think are important to be followed.
Okay, and what would that recognition entail? Reopening the embassy?
So I don't want to get ahead of the process. We're obviously not there. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. There's needs to be a Syrian-led process that plays out over the coming weeks. But we thought it was important on behalf of the United States, because we do have a number of authorities that we have exercised with respect to Syria over the past decade plus, especially with sanctions, but also with our diplomatic relations. We thought it was important that we make clear what we think are the principles that should be upheld during this transition process and during the formation of a new government.
Right. Are you aware of any other country where you recognize the state but you don't recognize the government, other than perhaps Venezuela?
Well, Venezuela certainly, that was going to be the one I was going to mention. Beyond that,
of course you were. You actually recognize what happened when the U.S. recognized Juan Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela.
I would refer you to a spokesman for the previous administration for an answer to that, because that happened during their time in office, not ours.
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking you what recognition means. I mean, that recognition of Guaido as in Venezuela didn't result in the reopening of the embassy.
It didn't result in the reopening. It's a very different situation, because you had that is a different situation when you have a figure who we recognize as the government, but actually isn't in control of the levers of power. You would have a different situation potentially here. We have an entity that is in control at least of some of the levers of power inside Syria right now. Certainly not all of them. So it's a different situation.
What exactly you mean? I mean, the Taliban. You never recognized the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan, and yet Afghanistan was recognized.
I don't think it is that complicated. You have seen the United States and other countries around the world refrain from, certainly in periods of transition, refrain from recognizing governments for extended periods of time in some circumstances, and withhold recognition of new governments. And what we are making clear is these are the principles that we think ought to be pursued on behalf of the Syrian people before the United States would take that step.
Okay, and then lastly on Syria, is there any new information about Austin Tice And can you give us any updates on Barbara Leaf and John Bass?
So I know Barbara and John are still in the region. I talked to them earlier today. I actually don't, I believe they're still in Jordan, but I can't, it wasn't a video conference, it was by phone, so I don't know exactly where they are, but I believe they're still in Jordan. They are still in the region. As it relates to Austin Tice, I don't have any new information to offer today. We do continue to believe that he is alive, and we continue to make clear in all of our conversations, either with entities on the ground in Syria or with entities that may be in communication with those on the ground in Syria, that we have no higher priority than the safe return of Austin Tice to his family.
I'm just wondering if you have